The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Sarah Chen stepped forward, her boots echoing against the crystalline floor. Around her, representatives from 47 alien species sat in their designated pods, their various forms of eyes fixed upon the lone human figure. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension, carrying the weight of a decision that would reshape the galaxy. "You have 30 seconds to respond to our terms," growled Vextar, the Krillian war chief whose scaled hide bore the scars of 1,000 battles. His 4 arms gestured menacingly as he spoke through the universal translator. "Surrender your colonies, submit to our collective rule, or face the combined might of the Alliance." Admiral Chen remained motionless, her weathered face betraying no emotion. Behind her, Captain Rodriguez whispered urgent coordinates into his comm device while Lieutenant Park's fingers danced across her tactical display. The 3 humans stood alone against an alliance that commanded over 10,000 star systems and fleets numbering in the millions. The ethereal Chancellor, Zephni, floated above her crystalline throne, her translucent form shimmering with what humans had learned to recognize as smug satisfaction. "Your species has proven adequate as warriors," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "But you lack the wisdom to know when you are beaten. Humanity controls merely 43 systems. We offer you life as our servants rather than extinction as our enemies." The massive view screen behind the Council displayed the tactical situation in all its terrible clarity. Humanity's colonies appeared as small blue dots scattered across the Outer Rim territories, while the Alliance's crimson markers formed an overwhelming wall of military might. The numbers were staggering. For every human ship, the Alliance fielded 27 vessels. For every human soldier, they could deploy 85 warriors from various species. Admiral Chen finally spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "I've listened to your terms. I've reviewed your numbers. I've considered your offer." She paused, letting the silence stretch until even the normally chattering Pipsy observers fell quiet. "And I have a message for you from Human Command." She reached into her uniform jacket with deliberate slowness, withdrawing a small data crystal that gleamed under the chamber's artificial lighting. "This contains humanity's official response to your ultimatum." The crystal caught the light as she held it up, its faceted surface reflecting the alien faces surrounding her. Vextar's mandibles clicked with what his species considered laughter. "Your bravado is amusing, human. What could your tiny collection of worlds possibly say that would change anything? You are outnumbered. You are outgunned. You are surrounded." "Indeed," added Chancellor Zephni, her form brightening with amusement. "Perhaps you wish to negotiate the terms of your surrender. We might be persuaded to allow some of your population to survive as laborers." The hive mind representative, a chittering mass of interconnected insectoid forms, spoke through dozens of voices at once. "The swarm acknowledges human courage, but courage feeds neither ships nor soldiers. Surrender is wisdom. Resistance is death." Admiral Chen inserted the crystal into the chamber's central communication array. The device hummed to life, its harmonics designed to be audible to all 47 species present. "The message is audio only, recorded by Fleet Admiral James Harrison, Supreme Commander of Human Forces. I suggest you listen carefully." The recording began with the sound of background chatter from what was clearly a military command center. Voices called out status reports while keyboards clattered and communications systems beeped steadily. Through it all came the voice of a man who had spent 60 years in military service, whose words carried the weight of absolute authority. "To the Galactic Council and their alliance of species," Admiral Harrison's voice filled the chamber, each word precisely enunciated. "You have made your position clear. You offer us servitude or extinction. You believe your numbers give you the right to dictate terms to humanity. You see our small territory and assume we are weak. The alien representatives leaned forward in their pods, their attention focused on the recording. Some showed confusion at the calm tone, having expected pleading or anger from a defeated species. Harrison's voice continued, now carrying a note of something that made several aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. You have made one critical error in your calculations. You have studied our military capabilities, counted our ships, analyzed our weapons. But you have never bothered to study our history. You don't understand what you're threatening to destroy. On the view screen, tactical displays showed Alliance fleets moving into position around human space, their formations precise and overwhelming. The crimson markers advanced like a tide of destruction, preparing to wash away the scattered blue points of human resistance. "Let me educate you," the recording went on, and now there was something in Harrison's voice that made even the battle-hardened Krillians pay closer attention. For the past 300 years, every species that has joined your alliance has done so after suffering a single decisive defeat. The Ethereals submitted after we destroyed their core fleet at Rigel. The Krillians joined after their homeworld blockade was broken. The hive mind allied with you after their expansion was halted at the neutral zone. Uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the chamber as species representatives recalled their own defeats and subsequent incorporation into the Alliance. The pattern was clear. The Alliance grew by absorbing those who had been conquered, offering them a place in the collective rather than complete destruction. "You expect humanity to follow the same pattern." Harrison's voice gained intensity. "You expect us to see your overwhelming force and choose survival over freedom. You expect us to kneel." The word kneel seemed to echo in the chamber long after it was spoken. Admiral Chen watched the alien faces around her, noting the subtle changes in their expressions. Confidence was giving way to curiosity, smugness to uncertainty. They were beginning to realize that this message was not unfolding as they had expected. "Here is what you have failed to understand about humanity," the recording continued, and now Harrison's voice carried a cold edge that made the chamber's temperature seem to drop several degrees. "We are not like the species you have defeated before. We did not develop spaceflight through peaceful exploration. We did not expand into the galaxy seeking harmony with other species. We clawed our way to the stars while fighting each other, world by world, system by system." The tactical display shifted, showing Earth's ancient history of conflicts. Wars that had raged across continents, conflicts that had consumed entire civilizations, battles that had been fought with weapons ranging from crude clubs to nuclear fire. Before we ever met an alien species, we had already perfected the art of warfare through 10,000 years of practice. We fought with stones and spears. We fought with gunpowder and steel. We fought with machines and atoms. We fought in trenches and skies and across vast oceans. We fought each other so thoroughly that war became the defining characteristic of our species. Several alien representatives were now exchanging worried glances. The Pipshi, whose own species had never known large-scale conflict, chittered nervously among themselves. Even the warlike Krillians seemed subdued by the implications of Harrison's words. And now, the recording reached its crescendo. "You threaten to destroy everything we have built among the stars. You offer us chains instead of freedom. You believe your numbers give you victory before the first shot is fired." Harrison paused, and in that silence, every being in the chamber could hear their own breathing, their own heartbeats, the quiet hum of life support systems. "You chose war." Admiral Harrison's final words rang out with absolute certainty. "Now watch how we wage it." The recording ended, leaving the chamber in complete silence. Admiral Chen straightened her uniform and looked around at the 47 species that had just declared war on humanity. Her expression remained calm, professional, but there was something in her eyes that had not been there before. "Transmission complete," she announced. "Human Command has received your ultimatum and provided their response." Admiral Harrison asks me to inform you that our fleets have their orders and are already moving to execute them. Chancellor Zephni's translucent form flickered with confusion. What fleets? Our intelligence shows your entire navy concentrated around your core systems in defensive positions. Admiral Chen allowed herself a small smile. That would be accurate if you were only seeing our defensive fleets. She gestured to Captain Rodriguez, who activated a new display on the main screen. The tactical map shifted, revealing new contacts through. The Krillian fortress world of Magdar had stood unconquered for 800 years. Its massive defensive installations could withstand direct bombardment from an entire fleet, while its orbital platforms commanded approaches from every direction. 30 million Krillian warriors called it home, making it the cornerstone of their military might. General Krellax had boasted that Magdar could hold against any siege for decades. The fortress lasted exactly 17 minutes. Captain Maria Santos crouched in the ventilation shaft 3 levels below Magdar's primary command center, her breathing apparatus recycling the toxic Krillian atmosphere, while her suit's systems mapped every corridor and junction around her. Behind her, 12 members of her infiltration team moved with silent precision through passages that were never meant to accommodate human forms. "Phoenix team report," she whispered into her throat mic, the words transmitted through quantum encryption that the Alliance had never seen before. "Phoenix lead copies," came the reply from Lieutenant Commander Jackson. "Currently positioned inside the fortress's main reactor core. Charges set on primary coolant systems. We have 17 minutes until containment failure cascades through the entire grid." Santos checked her tactical display, watching as status updates flowed in from teams scattered throughout the massive installation. Dragon Team had compromised the orbital defense network. Tiger Team controlled the communication arrays. Wolf Team was inside the command bunker itself, having spent 3 days infiltrating through maintenance tunnels that Alliance security had never bothered to guard. "All teams, this is Spider Lead," Santos transmitted to the 47 human operatives currently inside what the Krillians considered their most secure facility. "Execute Operation Prometheus on my mark. Remember, we want their command structure intact for interrogation. Everyone else is expendable." The teams had been inside Magdar for 6 days, having arrived not in ships, but in something far more insidious. Humanity had learned to think differently about interstellar warfare. While other species built bigger guns and thicker armor, humans had asked a simple question: what if the enemy never saw you coming? The answer lay in technology that made the Alliance's advances look primitive. Instead of massive fleets that could be detected from light years away, humans had developed infiltration pods that could travel between stars while appearing to be nothing more than space debris. Each pod contained a complete strike team with enough firepower to level a city, but to any sensor array, they looked like fragments of destroyed asteroids. "Mark," Santos whispered. Across Magdar, 47 different disasters struck simultaneously. Reactor coolant systems failed in cascading explosions that sent radioactive steam pouring through the facility's lower levels. Defensive weapon platforms turned on each other as their targeting systems received conflicting override codes. Gravity generators fluctuated wildly, crushing some defenders while sending others floating helplessly through corridors filled with weapons fire. In the command center, General Krellax watched his displays with growing horror as red warning indicators spread across every screen. His forearms worked frantically over control interfaces that no longer responded to his commands, while emergency klaxons wailed at frequencies that made his scales itch. "What's happening?" he roared at his communications officer. "Get me status reports from all defensive sectors." "Sir, we're receiving conflicting data," the officer replied, his own 4 hands trembling as he attempted to make sense of the chaos. "Sectors 7 through 15 report complete systems failure. Sectors 3 through 6 are showing massive life support breaches. The orbital platforms have stopped responding entirely." Through the reinforced viewports, Krelax could see the orbital defense stations that had protected Magdar for centuries. They hung motionless in space, their massive weapons silent and their running lights dark. 800 years of engineering excellence had become useless metal in less than 20 minutes. "Sir," another officer called out, his voice cracking with strain. "I'm detecting human life signs throughout the facility. Dozens of them. They're everywhere." The general's blood ran cold. Humans inside Magdar meant that every security protocol had been compromised, every defensive measure bypassed. It meant that the greatest fortress in Krillian space had been infiltrated by a species that supposedly lacked the technology for such operations. The command center's main doors suddenly sealed with a metallic thud that echoed through the chamber. Emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in red while the normal illumination failed. Through the sealed, transparent steel barriers, Krelax could see human figures moving with practiced efficiency through corridors filled with smoke and emergency lighting. "All teams, command is secured," came a voice through the facility's own communication system. Spoken in accented galactic standard by someone who clearly wasn't Krillian. "Dragon Team, begin downloads of tactical databases. Phoenix Team, prepare primary systems for controlled shutdown. Tiger Team, establish communication links with human command." Krelax grabbed his personal communicator, frantically attempting to contact Alliance High Command. The device activated normally, but instead of connecting to military frequencies, it displayed a simple message in human script. "Communication systems under new management. Please stand by for further instructions." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of Alliance worlds. The ethereal research station at Gossamer Prime went dark when human infiltrators introduced a computer virus that convinced the facility's artificial intelligence that reality had shifted 90 degrees. The AI spent precious minutes trying to recalibrate sensors that were functioning perfectly, while human teams systematically dismantled every piece of advanced technology in the installation. On the hive mind colony world of Nexus 7, human operatives had done something that Alliance strategists had believed impossible. They had severed the psychic links that connected individual drones to the collective consciousness. 30 million hive mind units found themselves alone in their own thoughts for the first time in their species' history, creating psychological chaos that was far more effective than any weapon. The Pipchai manufacturing centers that supplied the Alliance war effort discovered that their automated production lines had been reprogrammed to create modified components. Weapons that should have been powerful enough to crack planetary shields now produced energy bursts barely sufficient to power a child's toy. Armor plating that could deflect starship weaponry had been altered to have the consistency of paper. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the representatives watched their tactical displays with growing panic as reports flooded in from across Alliance space. Secure installations were going offline. Military bases were reporting catastrophic system failures. Entire fleets were discovering that their ships had been sabotaged while docked at supposedly impregnable space yards. "How?" Chancellor Zephni's form flickered rapidly between colors, a sign of extreme distress among her species. "Our security protocols are absolute. Our sensor networks detect everything larger than a grain of sand. No infiltration of this scale should be possible." Admiral Chen consulted the tactical display on her portable unit, watching as blue markers spread throughout Alliance territory like an infection. "You're thinking in terms of traditional warfare," she explained calmly. "Fleets and armies and territory to be conquered. But humans learned something different during our early wars on Earth. Sometimes the most effective attack comes from within." She gestured to the main display, which now showed detailed imagery of human infiltration teams at work throughout Alliance space. These operatives have been in position for over 2 years, arriving in ones and twos aboard civilian vessels, hiding among merchant crews and diplomatic missions. They've spent months learning your security procedures, mapping your installations, identifying critical vulnerabilities. Vextar's scaled hide had turned a sickly green color as he processed the implications. 2 years, he repeated slowly. You've been planning this since before our ultimatum was even issued. Longer than that, Chen corrected. Human Command began preparing for this possibility the day we made contact with your alliance. We've been studying each of your species, learning your strengths and weaknesses, developing countermeasures for every major military installation in Alliance space. The hive mind representative chittered frantically. Its dozens of voices speaking over each other in mounting panic. The swarm demands explanation. How did humans penetrate psychic defenses? No individual consciousness can resist collective detection. Chen's smile held no warmth. You assume human consciousness works the same way as yours. Our operatives were trained using techniques developed by human psychologists over centuries of studying individual mental resilience. Each infiltrator learned to compartmentalize their thoughts, to function as completely autonomous units while maintaining loyalty to the overall mission. On the main display, new reports continued to stream in. Alliance fleets attempting to respond to the crisis found their ships' navigation systems compromised, sending them on courses that would take weeks to correct. Communication networks established over centuries were failing as human viruses spread through quantum entanglement links that were supposed to be unhackable. The ethereal research facility at Gossamer Prime, which had been developing new weapons for the Alliance war effort, sent a desperate transmission before going silent. The message was brief but chilling. Humans have introduced unknown variables into our reality manipulation experiments. Local spacetime is becoming unstable, cannot maintain coherent thought patterns. Facility abandoning dimensional anchor in 30 minutes. A similar pattern emerged across dozens of worlds. Humans had not simply infiltrated Alliance installations. They had studied each species so thoroughly that they knew exactly how to target their specific vulnerabilities. Krillian honor-based command structures collapsed when subordinates received conflicting orders from superiors who appeared to be alive but were actually human operatives using captured communication codes. The PIPSI manufacturing networks failed when human hackers introduced recursive logic loops into their collective decision-making processes. The normally efficient species found themselves paralyzed by debates over increasingly trivial production details, arguing for hours about whether bolts should be turned clockwise or counterclockwise while their war material quotas went unfulfilled. You want to know the difference between humanity and every species in your alliance? Admiral Chen asked, her voice carrying over the chaos of incoming distress signals. Every one of you developed spaceflight after achieving internal peace. You explored the galaxy as unified civilizations seeking expansion and resources. She paused, watching as another alliance stronghold winked out on the tactical display. Humanity reached the stars while still fighting each other. We colonized hostile worlds while conducting civil wars. We built our first interstellar vessels with weapons pointed both outward at unknown threats and inward at our own species. War isn't something we do, it's something we are. The Chamber's communication systems suddenly activated without authorization, displaying the image of a human command center bustling with activity. Fleet Admiral Harrison sat at the center of the activity, his weathered face calm despite the magnitude of the operation unfolding around him. "Greetings, Council members," Harrison said, his voice carrying the same authority that had been evident in his recorded message. "I thought you might appreciate a real-time status report on Operation Prometheus. As of this moment, we have successfully neutralized 43% of Alliance military capacity without firing a single shot from our conventional forces." Behind him, holographic displays showed the scope of human infiltration throughout Alliance space. Red indicators marked installations that had been compromised or destroyed, while blue markers tracked human operatives still carrying out their missions. The remainder of your military assets are currently being systematically disabled by teams that you never detected, using methods that your species never developed, targeting vulnerabilities that you never knew existed. Harrison's expression remained professionally neutral, but there was steel in his voice. "This is impossible," Vextar protested, his forearms gesticulating wildly. No species could coordinate an operation of this magnitude while maintaining operational. So, 3 days after Operation Prometheus began, Chancellor Zephni floated alone in her private chambers aboard the Alliance flagship Eternal Harmony, studying reports that defied everything she thought she knew about warfare. Her translucent form flickered between colors that had no names in any language, combinations of despair, confusion, and something approaching respect. The numbers were staggering. In 72 hours, humanity had effectively neutralized 67% of Alliance military capacity without engaging in a single fleet battle. More disturbing was the growing realization that this had been accomplished by fewer than 10,000 human operatives who had been living and working inside Alliance territory for years. A soft chime announced an incoming priority transmission. The communication array activated without her authorization, displaying Admiral Harrison's image with crystal clarity. Behind him, she could see human officers working with calm efficiency, managing an operation that had brought the galaxy's most powerful alliance to its knees. "Chancellor," Harrison said with professional courtesy, "I trust you've had time to review the tactical situation and consider your options." Zephni's form solidified into a bitter silver color. "What you've done is unprecedented, monstrous. You violated every convention of civilized warfare." "Have we?" Harrison's expression remained neutral. "Our operatives have targeted only military installations and personnel directly involved in your war effort. Civilian populations have been specifically avoided. In fact, our rules of engagement are more restrictive than those used by Alliance forces in your previous conquests." The accusation stung because it was true. When the Alliance had absorbed the Viridian Republic, entire civilian populations had been relocated to make room for Krillian military bases. The incorporation of the Spiral Confederacy had involved the systematic destruction of their cultural centers to prevent resistance movements. "You're holding our worlds hostage," Zephni protested. "We're holding your military installations," Harrison corrected. "Your civilian populations are free to go about their normal lives, provided they don't interfere with our operations. In contrast, your ultimatum to humanity involved the complete subjugation of our species." Admiral Chen's voice came through a second communication channel as she transmitted from the council chambers. "Chancellor, I have updated terms from Human Command. Given the current tactical situation, we're prepared to discuss a ceasefire." Zephni's form brightened with desperate hope. "What are your conditions?" "Complete withdrawal of Alliance military forces from human space," Chen began, consulting her tactical display. "Recognition of human territorial sovereignty. Formal apologies to the governments of all 43 human colonies for the threat of involuntary incorporation into your alliance." The terms were remarkably restrained, given humanity's current strategic advantage. Zephni had expected demands for territory, resources, or reparations that would cripple the alliance for generations. "And if we agree to these terms?" she asked carefully. "Our operatives will withdraw from Alliance installations," Harrison replied. "Your military capacity will be restored. Normal diplomatic relations can be established between our peoples." He paused, and his next words carried unmistakable finality. "But understand this clearly. Humanity will never again tolerate threats to our freedom. Any future attempt to force us into subjugation will result in responses that make Operation Prometheus look restrained." Across the galaxy, the practical implications of that warning were becoming evident. On the Krillian fortress world of Magdar, General Krelax sat in his own command center under the watchful eyes of Captain Santos and her infiltration team. The humans had not killed him or his staff. Instead, they had systematically demonstrated that every security measure he trusted could be compromised at will. "Your defensive protocols are impressive," Santos told him, reviewing schematics of the facility on her portable display. "But they're designed to repel external attacks. You never considered that the threat might come from inside." Krelax studied the human captain with something approaching professional admiration. "How long have your people been preparing for this war?" "Since the day we learned your alliance existed," Santos replied honestly. "Human command recognized that eventually some galactic power would view our independence as a threat. We've spent decades developing contingency plans for conflicts with technologically superior opponents." The general's scales shifted to a pale blue color that indicated deep thought among his species. "You could have destroyed this facility completely, killed everyone inside. Why didn't you?" Santos checked her chronometer before answering. "Because destruction is expensive and rebuilding takes time. This way, once the political situation is resolved, normal operations can resume without massive economic disruption. Everyone goes back to their normal lives." Similar conversations were taking place throughout Alliance space. On Nexus 7, the hive mind drones were gradually regaining their connection to the collective consciousness as human operatives carefully reversed the psychological isolation protocols. The experience had taught them something new about individual thought that would influence their species for generations. At the ethereal research station on Gossamer Prime, human technicians worked alongside Alliance scientists to stabilize the dimensional experiments that had been disrupted during the infiltration. Dr. Sarah Kim, a specialist in theoretical physics, explained the process to her ethereal counterpart. "Your reality manipulation technology is fascinating," she said while adjusting quantum field generators. "But it's vulnerable to interference patterns that your mathematics don't account for. Human science developed along different theoretical frameworks." The ethereal researcher, whose name translated roughly as bright curiosity, flickered with confused colors. "Your species uses crude approximations, where we employ elegant precision. How can inferior methods produce superior results?" Dr. Kim smiled as she fine-tuned the dimensional stabilizers. "Different doesn't mean inferior. Human science developed through trial and error, building solutions that worked even when we didn't understand why. Sometimes practical knowledge is more valuable than theoretical perfection." Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers, representatives from 47 species gathered to hear humanity's final terms. The atmosphere was markedly different from the confident arrogance that had characterized their ultimatum just days earlier. Several species were openly arguing among themselves about whether the Alliance had made a catastrophic strategic error. Vextar addressed Admiral Chen with barely controlled frustration. "Your terms are acceptable," he admitted reluctantly. "But we need guarantees that humanity will not use these infiltration techniques against Alliance members in the future." "That depends entirely on whether Alliance members threaten human interests in the future," Chen replied evenly. "We have no desire for conquest or expansion beyond our current territories. But we will defend ourselves with whatever methods prove necessary." The Pipshi representative chittered nervously. "How can we trust that your operatives will actually withdraw? How do we know they won't remain in place for future operations?" Admiral Harrison's image appeared on the main display, answering the question directly. "Because maintaining covert operatives requires ongoing resources and oversight that could be better spent on peaceful pursuits. Operation Prometheus was designed to resolve this specific threat, not to establish permanent intelligence networks." He gestured to the tactical displays behind him, which showed the systematic withdrawal of human teams from Alliance installations. "As we speak, our operatives are executing extraction protocols. Within 72 hours, all human personnel will have departed Alliance territory through the same channels they used to enter." The hive mind representative spoke through its collective voice, each word carefully chosen. The swarm acknowledges human tactical superiority, but integration into alliance structure remains beneficial for all species. Humans could contribute significant capabilities to collective defense. Thank you for the offer, Chen replied diplomatically. But humanity values its independence too highly to accept membership in any collective government. We're prepared to establish normal diplomatic relations, including trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, but we will not submit to external authority. Chancellor Zephni's form had stabilized into a resigned golden color as she processed the new reality of galactic politics. Very well. The Alliance formally withdraws all territorial claims on human space and recognizes the sovereignty of human colonies. We apologize for the misunderstanding regarding your political status. Accepted, Admiral Chen said simply. Human Command will transmit detailed withdrawal schedules for our operatives within the hour. Normal diplomatic channels can be established once the military situation has been fully resolved. As the formal proceedings concluded, private communications flowed between species representatives. The implications of humanity's tactical demonstration extended far beyond the immediate conflict. A species that could infiltrate any installation, compromise any security system, and coordinate operations across galactic distances while remaining completely undetected represented a fundamental shift in the balance of power. More importantly, humanity had revealed capabilities that suggested their technological development had progressed along paths that other species had never explored. Where the Alliance had focused on building larger, more powerful weapons, humans had developed tools for precision warfare that made conventional military doctrine obsolete. In her private chambers, Chancellor Zephni composed a classified report for the Alliance High Council. The document would remain sealed for 50 years, but its conclusions would influence Alliance policy for generations. Humanity represents a new paradigm in galactic civilization. They have demonstrated that technological superiority is not merely a function of raw power, but of creative application of scientific principles. Any future interactions with this species must be based on mutual respect rather than assumed dominance. 3 weeks later, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the human battleship Resilience, watching as the last Alliance vessels departed from the outer boundaries of human space. The crisis was over, diplomatic relations were being established, and trade agreements were already being negotiated. Captain Rodriguez joined her at the viewport, studying the distant shapes of Alliance ships returning to their own territories. "Do you think they'll try again?" he asked. Chen considered the question carefully. "Not the same way. They understand now that we're not like the other species they've encountered. But there will be other challenges, other conflicts. Humanity's independence will always make some galactic powers uncomfortable. And we'll be ready for them," Rodriguez stated with quiet confidence. "We'll be ready," Chen agreed, "because that's what humans do. We adapt, we prepare, and we survive. The galaxy is learning that threatening our freedom comes with costs they're not prepared to pay." Outside the viewport, the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with worlds and civilizations and possibilities that humanity was only beginning to explore. The message had been delivered, the lesson taught, and the precedent established. Humanity had chosen war, and the galaxy had learned to watch how they waged it. In the depths of space between the stars, automated beacon networks carried a new entry in their databases, a simple notation that would influence interstellar relations for centuries to come. Species, human. Status, independent. Threat assessment, do not antagonize. Preferred engagement protocol, diplomatic contact with full acknowledgement of sovereignty. The galaxy was learning that some prices for conquest were simply too high to pay. Purity. The logistics alone would require communications that we would have detected. Harrison nodded approvingly. An excellent observation. You're quite correct that traditional communication methods would have made this operation impossible. But humans have always excelled at finding unconventional solutions to tactical problems. The display behind him shifted to show quantum entanglement networks that existed parallel to Alliance communication systems, invisible to their detection methods because they operated on principles that Alliance science had dismissed as impractical. Human operatives throughout the galaxy had maintained perfect coordination through these hidden channels, executing their missions with precision that would have been impossible using conventional technology. The question now, Harrison continued, is whether you're prepared to discuss reasonable terms for ending this conflict. Because I should mention that what you've witnessed so far represents approximately 15% of our operational capacity. Gout Alliance space. Blue markers appeared deep within territory that the Alliance had considered completely secure, moving with purpose toward strategic targets. The numbers were staggering. Hundreds of human vessels operating in coordinated cells, having somehow penetrated the most heavily guarded systems in the galaxy. "Impossible!" snarled Vextar, his forearms working frantically over his control interfaces. "Our sensor networks show no signs of intrusion. No ships could have penetrated our defenses without detection." "You're quite right," Admiral Chen agreed. "No ships could have penetrated your defenses." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "These aren't ships." The display zoomed in on individual contacts, revealing the truth that would reshape galactic warfare forever. Each blue marker represented not a traditional starship, but something far more dangerous. Human engineering applied to the problem of interstellar conflict with 3 centuries of accumulated expertise.